Hey, I'm just like everybody else, right? I like to save money. I like to be cheap from time to time. I mean, that's why I cut my hair like this. You guys think that I can't grow hair? No. Said I really just want to save the money by cutting it myself. What about toilet paper, right? I mean, as long as it's not single ply, go as cheap as you can. It's just there to wipe off the backside. You know what I mean? You got to do what you got to do, but there's certain times where you don't want to be cheap, like, with latex birth control. Am I right, fellas? I mean, the last thing you want is for you to meet a guy 18 years down the road that looks vaguely similar to you, but yet you have no idea who he is, but yet he hates you. Don't be a fool, fellas. I mean, don't go cheap in certain areas if you know what I'm talking about. So in this episode, we're talking about a few great options that you can get cheap on draft day at the running back position. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there today. We're talking about cheap targets on draft day, right? Running backs are key in fantasy football, and we talk all the time about grabbing running backs early, but maybe you find yourself in the double-digit rounds looking for some options. Don't worry, we have you covered here today. There's a few guys that we're looking at, and for the criteria for this show, this is kind of what I use, right? I want guys, for the most part, that have weekly flex upside, right? Maybe in a good matchup, these guys are going to get enough touches weekly to still be somewhat viable. Not somebody that you want to start right away to start the season, but that you could use in a pinch if needed. But they also play behind a stud, and if that stud goes down, you basically instantly have a top 12 running back in fantasy football. That huge ceiling, the safer floor on a weekly basis. Those are the running backs that we're going to be talking about here in today's episode. Before I get into these names, just a quick reminder, our draft guide is for sale at thefantasyheadliners.com. It's scheduled to release July 1st. Been getting a lot of questions about it. It's going to be over 600 virtual pages of all things fantasy football, and you're looking for some deep diving content to get you a championship here in 2021. That's where you need to be. We got you taken care of here this year. But now, let's look at a few late round running backs that we're targeting here in the double-digit rounds of 2021. Let me bring the graphic up here, and the first guy we're going to be talking about is A.J. Dillon, running back of the Green Bay Packers. Now, most people, they only want to talk about his quad size, right? That's basically all that anybody ever talks about, not his actual play on the field. But as of right now, looking like he has a 10th round ADP as far as consensus ADP around the industry goes. But with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones in the mix last year, we didn't get to see very much of A.J. Dillon. Really only had one game all year long in which he saw more than 5 carries, and that was Week 16 against the Tennessee Titans, where he had a juicy 21 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Now, Jamal Williams is gone, right? He is over in Detroit. Sorry, Jamal, I'm praying for you, buddy. But that opens up 150 touches now in this offense for the Green Bay Packers. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not out here trying to say that this is A.J. Dillon's backfield, because it's not. It is still Aaron Jones' backfield. But with those 150 vacated touches in this offense, we know that Matt LaFleur wants to utilize 2 running backs. We've seen it in the past couple years in Green Bay with Jamal Williams, right? He's averaging right around 150 touches a year. They're not going to just give everything to Aaron Jones. He will get the majority, but there's still going to be another back in the mix. And that's probably why they didn't bring Jamal Williams back, right? Why re-sign Jamal Williams when you have the young rookie that you're paying a lot less money to basically do the same type of things? Now, we're talking right around 10 to 12 touches a week here. Not huge volume. He's not going to be a guy that gets 20 touches a week, at least to start off. But 10 or 12 touches a week in a Green Bay offense is a decent flex in good matchups to start the season, as long as you're playing in one of those larger league formats, right? Maybe you have 2 or 3 flexes. Maybe you got some crazy scoring, whatever it may be. That's when maybe you look at him here early in the season. He's somebody that we're kind of stashing, though. But that's fine, because we're getting him in the 10th round, right? Do you remember Eddie Lacy? The Packers offense made Eddie Lacy a thing. Aaron Rodgers made Eddie Lacy a thing because defenses are worried about said Aaron Rodgers. If anything were to happen to Aaron Jones in this offense, the volume and efficiency that we could see from A.J. Dillon could be league winning. He's somebody you can get in the double-digit rounds with that safe-ish floor, something you're not counting on to start the season, right? Hopefully you don't draft him in the 10th round and you plan on starting him week 1. That's a problem, but if you can get him, you can stash him. He could be a pleasant surprise and be a high-end running back 2 at worst if anything happens to Aaron Jones. Next guy we're talking about, Gus Edwards, Baltimore Ravens. Now, Gus, as of right now, sitting in the 11th round of draft, so he's even later than we saw A.J. Dillon, and I can see myself owning a lot of Gus Edwards here in 2021. The team likes him. It's obvious, right? He just signed a 2-year extension worth $9 million to stay in Baltimore, and they let Mark Ingram walk. Not that Mark Ingram was much in 2020, but those are still, 70, 75 carries that he got this year that could go the way of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. But it's because the way that he fits in the offense. And they didn't need to break the bank to re-sign him either. He works in Baltimore. We've seen the production over the past few years. He has a track record of producing there, and that's why they wanted to keep him. We know the Ravens, they're going to run, and they're going to run a lot. In 2020, they were number 1 in the NFL in rush attempts, number 1 in yards, and number 3 in rushing touchdowns. It's kind of what they do. On average in Baltimore this past year, they ran 35 times a game. Obviously Lamar Jackson is going to boost that up a little bit, and that's why those numbers are a little bit higher, but still, we know they're a run-first team there in Baltimore. Over the last 3 seasons, we have seen Gus Edwards average right around 145 touches, and he's never had less than 738 total yards. And over 5 yards per carry yearly, this guy is definitely a safety valve in this offense. He can be that ground and pound type guy to run between the tackles, and he excels when doing the RPOs with Lamar Jackson. But make no mistake, he can bust a big one. He's not just this slow plotter between the tackles. The dude can break off big runs. He had 9 runs last year of over 15 yards. That's 7th most in the NFL among all running backs in the NFL, and he only had 144 carries. If Lamar takes any step forward in this passing game here this year, the rushing numbers could actually get better. And that's scary because they're already good. Now, it's not out of the question for Gus to see right around 10 to 12 weekly touches in the number 1 rush offense in football. Would we like to see more? Sure, we would. But you're getting him in the 11th round, and he's in the 11th round for a reason. It's because that volume isn't just safe there to start the season. However, if anything were to happen to J.K. Dobbins, with no Mark Ingram now, you better believe that Gus Edwards is getting a butt ton of carries in Baltimore. I don't know about you, but I would like to own a bell cow running back for the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL in fantasy football. That just makes sense, right? He did see 10 plus touches in 7 games in 2020, and he's even talking now that he wants more involvement in the passing game. Sign me up for a whole lot of Gus Edwards because he gives you that weekly safe floor, plus anything happens to Dobbins, dude's a borderline running back 1. What about another guy, a guy that we've talked about almost every year on this show in this position? It's Latavius Murray of the New Orleans Saints. Like I said, once again, I feel like I need to remind people about Latavius Murray. Every single year in this type of episode, I got to bring him up. It's like Groundhog Day all over again. This is a guy who's going to come out year after year, get right around 180 touches and 800 yards, and you're going to get him in the double-digit rounds. A lot of people don't like him because he's really not involved in the passing game. Well, don't let that fool you. Obviously, it's because Alvin Kamara soaks up the majority of those targets. He's just not called on to do something that Alvin Kamara is really good at, but take a look at the total overall numbers. He's basically a top 30 running back on a yearly basis, and you're getting to draft him right around running back 45 overall. In 2020, the Saints ran 31 times per game, and it could be even more this year, right? No Drew Brees under center. Maybe they run the ball a little bit more to take the pressure off of Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. We've seen what Murray can do, though, if Alvin Kamara were to go down. This guy absolutely crushes it when Alvin Kamara is not in the game. He hasn't had a season so far with less than 719 yards and at least 5 touchdowns since 2017. That was his rookie year with the Oakland Raiders. The guy continues to produce year in and year out and continually gets overlooked on draft day. When the time comes and you're on the clock, this guy's ADP as of right now is into the 12th round. He has an above average offensive line, a new quarterback that we said is going to have the pressure taken off of him, and the opportunity for 180 plus touches. There's no reason why I'm going to pass over Latavius Murray in those double-digit rounds. He's just another one of those guys that I've said over and over in this episode, right? He has that safe-ish floor if you need him in a pinch as a flex play, especially in deeper leagues. And if anything happens to the stud in front of him, in Alvin Kamara, you have yourself a fringe running back 1 here once again in New Orleans. Love Latavius Murray to stash on my bench once again in 2021 fantasy football. What about another guy that we've mentioned here? This is the 2nd week in a row. This may be a record. Let's talk about Darrell Henderson of the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I'm really not going to beat this one into submission too much. I mean, Kyle did a video here on this channel last week with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson and really explained some of the similarities. So I'll only briefly touch here on this one. But for me, I'm going to have a lot of Darrell Henderson late in drafts. As of right now, his consensus ADP is into the 12th round. But I have no doubt that Cam Akers is the guy in LA. I'm not questioning his talent. I'm not saying that he's no good. What I'm saying is he's expensive, right? I mean, he's all the way into the second round of fantasy football drafts where I can get Darrell Henderson in the 12th round. To me, it just seems like better value. Sean McVay saw in the past what happens when you overwork a running back in Todd Gurley, right? A little bit different scenario, but ever since then, he's really gone to that committee-style approach, right? One that a lot of the teams in the NFL are actually going to. We actually saw 3 running backs in this backfield last year, right? Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, and Malcolm Brown. Now, Malcolm Brown no longer in the picture, but Darrell Henderson may be one of those guys that can see right around 150 touches total this year. I mean, in those 150 touches, he's going to get you right around 700 yards and a handful of touchdowns. Not to mention, he'll still be involved in the passing game from time to time, where he was a lot last year as well, plus a lot around the goal line. He could see maybe even 7, 8, or 9 touchdowns this season in what I believe will be an overall improved offense in LA. Like I said, Malcolm Brown is gone, but we do know that Sean McVay still wants to run the football. How do we know that? Look at the past stats. History is the best way to see where we're going in the future. He has had a top 10 rushing offense 3 of the 4 years he's been in LA. There's no reason why that's going to change now. Add in the fact that their offensive line, one of the most improved this offseason in the NFL. Plus, he's a cheap price, like I said, on draft day. If anything happens to Cam Akers, you better believe that Darrell Henderson putting up some points in fantasy football 2021. He's definitely a guy I'm looking at later in drafts. Now, last couple boxes, I got to leave them blurred out, right? That's kind of the cherry on top, the member bonus for the members of Holding Chubb here on YouTube. It's the blue join button right next to subscribe if you're interested. But going back to today's episode, talking about some of these running backs, right? And I hear a lot of people say that, well, this is why I don't go running back heavy early. I want to grab some of these guys later and just hope that one of them turn out. In my opinion, I'll just rebut that by saying still take the guys early and still grab these guys late, because then you have trade bait. If anything happens to one of your studs, you're covered. No matter what it is, you have options later in the draft. Hopefully by the time you reach the double-digit rounds, you're not trying to fill starting roster spots still, right? You're not reliant on these guys weekly. You're looking for that heavy upside now. Would I take all 4 of these guys if they all fell to me? No, probably not. I don't want 4 backups sitting on my bench because I still want some availability at other positions, but they're definitely names to pay attention to. I would love to have maybe 1, maybe 2 of these guys late in drafts to stash on the bottom of my bench and just hope that something happens, or maybe, like I said, trade bait down the road could definitely get you another piece if you find yourself lacking somewhere else. So that's why I love these type of running backs later in the drafts, and this is why we do this episode every single week. But I want to know what you guys think. Who are a few of the names you're looking at in the double-digit rounds at the running back position that you would like to stash on the bottom of your bench? There's a lot of other guys out there that I could have covered, but I want to know what you think, and maybe we'll touch on them here in a future episode here on the Fantasy Headliners. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. Do me a favor, hit the like button, please. Likes right now in the offseason are like gold on YouTube, and I will greatly be appreciative for any of them that I can get. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. I look forward to hearing from you down below in the comment section. We'll talk to you later.